Hi, everyone. This is Larry Musolino. I wanted to discuss a topic about adapting um, OER resources for math and statistics, and also so other STEM fields as well, with the goal of promoting equity and inclusion. So first, let me start off to discuss a little more about what is OER, why do we use it, and then what are possible resources that an instructor might use in either math, statistics, or other STEM. And then I also have an appendix with a lot more details for anyone that's interested. So first, what does OER really stand for? Well, OER is a teaching resource that's offered freely to users in the public domain. And this was actually initiated by, or more formalized by Congress back in 2019, where they provided some incentives to colleges and universities to help promote OER. And in the years since that, Affordable College Textbook Act, has really been an exponential growth in the use and adoption of OER resources. In fact, most colleges and universities now have some kind of a formal program for adopting OER. At Penn State, we have a supplemental definition. We also include affordable materials, where any course materials that cost less than $50 is considered affordable. And this comes into play quite a bit in math and statistics courses, because sometimes an instructor might want to use ancillary resources, for example, a publisher's website for online homeworks or quizzes or exams, that kind of thing. And sometimes there's a nominal cost for that, but if it's kept under $50, we consider it open and affordable. Well, why OER? Well, here was a news article where it was kind of jokingly referring to the cost of textbook and the significant increase in textbook prices over time. And I think we all know that, when it comes to tuition and textbooks, the rate of increase in these costs is much higher than the rate of inflation. And so this really affects students in terms of affordability. There are many instances where I know some students have decided to not purchase course materials due to cost. And so the goal is to try to give students all an equal footing and remove that financial obstacle to obtaining course resources. In other cases, it might delay a student getting the course materials, right? A student might have to wait because they can't afford the materials right away, and that puts them behind in terms of getting up and running in the course in day one. In addition to that, there's been some studies that have shown, besides the obvious cost savings for using low cost or no cost materials, there have actually been studies that shows there's improved learning outcomes for courses adopting OER resources, especially for lower income students that might be using Pell Grants. So here's one such study. This was conducted at the University of Georgia. This was across multiple courses such as biology, psychology, and so on. Pretty large sample size, 22,000 students. About 10,000 students were in courses using open source materials. Another group of about 12,000 were in courses using traditional publisher materials. And you can see here in the non-Pell comparison, this is plotting average grades for these students. You could see here the white bar is the non-OER resource, the gray bar is the OER resource. And you could see confidence intervals here at the top of the bars, a very significant difference, improvement in outcomes for the gray bars, especially for Pell. If you notice here, there's a significant difference for Pell recipients. And so, one possible reason here is, again, students with OER materials have access to course materials on day one of the course. They don't get delayed, they don't fall behind. So this really promotes an equity standpoint where all students have access to the same materials independent of their financial capabilities. All right. So another reason for OER is flexibility for instructors. You can mix content from different OER sources. You know, sometimes instructors might look for an OER textbook to match their curriculum, and they really don't find a good match. And they say, OER is not for me. I can't find a good match. Well, you don't have to restrict yourself to just one OER textbook or one OER source. You could take, let's say, a chapter or two from one OER textbook and a different chapter from a different OER textbook. You can also include open source images, videos, animations, graphing tools in math and statistics. Graphing tools, of course, very important. You can include simulations. So the nice thing is with OER material, you can integrate content from multiple sources and create your own customized textbook, which is open source. So you're free to mix and match the best content from different open source materials, which really gives you a lot of flexibility in how you design your course, how you design this OER capability. So for folks looking specifically in the math statistics area, the good news is there's many sources of OER. Especially in the past few years, there's been a very significant increase. Because, you know, as instructors create their own customized OER resources, they make that available as another OER resource. So there's been this kind of like a snowball effect. Well, that's the good news. The bad news is that there are too many sources of OER resources. What I mean by that is when you're out looking for OER materials, it could be overwhelming and daunting to try to find the right OER resources for your applications. All right, so how would you get started looking for OER materials? Well, I think a good place to start is check out what other faculty are using at your college and university. Maybe other faculty have already gone down that road, and for a given course or a given curriculum, they've identified good sources of OER material. So why reinvent the wheel? Well, another option is to go and look at very popular OER repositories. Again, I'm talking mostly STEM fields, but OpenStax is a very popular site, Merlot, OER Commons, and so on. In the appendix, I list a lot more of these OER repositories. Another option for those instructors that might want an integrated textbook and homework system or an integrated assessment system, companies now are integrating OER resources and building a custom assessment tool around that. My Open Math is a free open source system where you can pre-select already developed courses. If I'm teaching a calculus course, I can go to My Open Math and pre-select a course that has a textbook and all these homework test banks, pre-built quizzes, pre-built exams. Of course, I can go in and edit those and make changes, but it's nice to have a template to start with. Lumen Learning, WebWork, XYZ Homework, Edfinity, and there's more, but these are just popular integrated OER homework systems. And many of these options are low cost, less than $50 to build a course using an OER textbook. For statistics, I teach quite a few statistics sections each semester. OpenStax has both an introductory statistics and a business statistics textbook that you can use. Edfinity has quite a few options. My Open Math has quite a few options. Lumen Learning has options. So again, these are popular places to go, especially if you want to integrate both the textbook and an assessment tool all together in one environment. Here's some other resources that you might be interested in looking at. OpenStax I mentioned, Edfinity I mentioned, My Open Math. My Open Math is, I think, a good starting point to look at because, again, the resources there are totally free. The homework system is free, the textbooks are free. A couple more here. The American Institute of Mathematics has open source textbooks that have gone through a editorial review process. So Here are just a few things to keep in mind as you're looking for OER. Search through some of the larger repositories like OpenStax, OER Commons. But there's really not one main OER repository to search. You have to kind of go out and look at several different options. This is a good job, I think, to engage your reference librarian, because at your college or university, there might be a reference person that's already been investigating OER. So that would be a good resource to tap into. You can also form a community of practice with other faculty. This would allow you to get together, share common interests, identify common resources, share experiences with OER. Okay. And then once you have the OER materials, remember, you can reuse that. You can retain it, keep copies. You can revise it. Remember, you're able to go in and make your own changes to that. You can remix it, meaning you could take material from different sources and combine it to create a new OER resource. Okay. I just wanted to make a comment about equity and inclusion. You know, when we think of equity, it's really referring to fairness in educational opportunities for students. Well, by adopting OER resources, we're really leveling the playing field, and we're being fair to all students and letting them get equal access to course materials on day one of the course. So I think it's very important for instructors to consider this adoption of OER. Remember, you can adapt and customize the materials to meet any specific learning objectives. Also, you can provide personalized learning experiences for students based on, the different student backgrounds you have, student interests. Because again, you can customize all of these open source materials. And you can provide inclusive examples and context so students are just more comfortable and engaged in these customized learning resources. All right, well, also I've included some different sources of OER materials here in an appendix. I'm not going to go through this just because of time constraint, but I've included just some comments here on OpenStax, Merlot, Open Textbook Library, and so on. So hopefully this is helpful as a resource for further investigation.